Hello and welcome back to Droneman Scotland. Today we're looking at the ruins of Buckholm Tower, which are said to be haunted by the ghost of a former Laird of Buckholm named James Pringle, who lived there in the latter part of the 18th century.
Weird tales are told of terrible noises being heard coming from the dungeon. And there are also reports of an everlasting bloodstain to be found on an old beam which marks the scene of an act of murder by Pringle himself at that exact spot. Once again, this was a wee bit out of the way and not too easy to find. So join us on our wee drive and walk to find Buckholm Tower. But as we do, strap yourselves in, it's story time. Let us tell you a wee bit about James Pringle. Pringle was an evil man who so ill-treated his wife and young son that they eventually left him. It is said that no woman was safe in the tower, and his cruelty was common knowledge for miles around. His favourite pastime was tracking down Covenanters with his two ferocious hounds. Known as a local government supporter, Pringle was called upon one day by the captain of a troop of dragoons to assist in the break-up of an unlawful assembly of Covenanters on nearby Ladhope Moor. Pringle was only too pleased to assist, and shrewdly guessing the exact location where the religious dissenters were most like to be, led the dragoons to the exact spot. However, the unlawful assembly had received some prior warning of the raid, and had already dispersed, with the exception of two men, Geordie Elliot, whose wife had once been in Pringle's employ, and his son, William. Old Geordie had been thrown from his horse and was badly hurt. William Elliot had stayed by his father's side. Both were well-known Covenanters. The wicked Laird of Buckholm was all in favour of disposing of the two men on the spot, but Captain Bruce of the Dragoons felt they might be able to provide some valuable information about their fellow Covenanters. Thus, it was arranged that Pringle would hold them prisoner at Buckholm for the night, and the captain would send an escort to collect them the following day. Back at Buckholm, the two unfortunate men were thrown into the dungeon, and the captain and his dragoons left. Pringle dined and drank brandy, and as he became more and more drunk, he became more and more ill-tempered and vicious. At length he lurched to his feet and made for the dungeon. At the doorway he met several of his servants who had been disturbed by calls for assistance coming from within. Old Geordie Elliot was in a bad way as a result of his fall, and William Elliot was pleading for help for the old man. Pushing the servants to one side, Pringle entered the dungeon, and the waiting men heard sounds of heavy blows, strangled screams, and a dragging noise before total silence. Then the Laird reappeared. Pushing past the servants, Pringle was just about to return to the study to consume some more brandy, when there was a loud knock at the entrance door to the tower. One of the servants hurriedly opened the door, and outside stood old Isabel Elliot. She had come in search of her husband and son. Muttering a drunken oath, Pringle grabbed the old woman and dragged her down to the dungeon. A loud scream came from the woman as she saw hanging from hooks attached to the old oak beam, the bodies of her two menfolk, appearing more like carcasses of meat. The distraught woman staggered from the dungeon, fell to the ground and sobbed uncontrollably. The wicked Laird looked down upon her, calling her an old witch. The woman slowly dragged herself to her feet, her eyes burning with hatred. She faced the drunken Laird and cursed him for what he had done.
I curse you, James Pringle.
From that time on, Pringle was convinced that he was a haunted man. He was firmly convinced that he was haunted by ghostly hounds who could, and did, attack him at any time of day or night. Time after time, his servants would burst in upon him after hearing his screams to find him fighting off unseen hounds. He would stagger off his horse after a long and furious ride, pleading for his servants to save him from the ravages of these invisible hounds that were plaguing him. Shortly afterwards, Pringle died a painful death, and even at the point of death, he was still racked with convulsions, as if still being attacked by these unseen hounds. As the first anniversary of the Laird's death approached, a ghostly figure was seen in the vicinity of the tower, running for his life towards the entrance from a pack of baying spectral hounds. The following night, everybody in the household heard the baying sounds and a voice calling for help, followed by a loud banging on the front door of the tower. The voice sounded just like that of the former Laird, but when the door was opened, the sound ceased completely, and the courtyard was found to be totally deserted. The sounds were heard again the following night, the first anniversary of the Laird's death, but this time they came from the direction of the dungeon. Since that time, every June on the anniversary of the death of the Laird of Buckholm, these same sounds and heavy banging on the dungeon door have been heard coming in varying intensity from the depths of the tower. The Reverend Henry Davidson is reported to have performed an exorcism to cast out the devil of Buckholm and put an end to James Pringle's nightly wanderings. How was that for a spooky story, eh? Well, let's wind down a wee bit with some information about the tower itself, eh? Buckholm Tower stands isolated high on the exposed fellside above the valley of the Gala Water, about a mile north of Galashiels. The 16th century tower house is now in a very ruinous and unstable condition, although the later wing to the south is in a slightly better state of repair. The L-plan tower is roughly built of local rubble and rises to 3 stories and a garret. A small stair tower projects from the main block. The ground floor is vaulted and has a doorway but does not communicate with the upper floors. The main entrance to the building was at first floor level in the stair tower. The tower has been enclosed within a barmkin. These are a rare survival, and it's fortunate that Buckholm retains not only remains of the barmkin, but of an arched gateway too. I had some interesting characters wondering what I was up to on my walk up to the tower. I'm sure they were just after their dinner. And that's all for today's story. This week, if you want a Droneman Scotland keyring, it is tucked under this stone on the wall as you enter the track up to the tower. Good luck. Thank you once again for joining us at Droneman Scotland. Thank you for commenting, liking and sharing the videos on social media, on YouTube. We really appreciate it. If you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing. Or we'll send the ghost of James Pringle to haunt you. And then you'll have to have a whole exorcism and it'll be a whole thing. You could just subscribe and it would avoid that whole hassle. I'm of course only joking, we don't have that power. But if you would like to subscribe, we would appreciate it. Thank you very much, and cheery bye!